you will not, like, I will not show 90% of the workings that I do. Some of my best teachers and peers have a lot lower followers than me, and they are still, to me, teachers of those things who know a lot. Hi witches, welcome back to my channel. It's me, your local chaotic witch aunt, and today I am contributing my video to the occult tea hashtag, which I am excited about. So this is just a conversation that was opened up by Ella Harrison, the Polish folk witch, and redheaded witch, just to kind of have like a community conversation about social media and witchcraft and the greater effects on it. And I'm excited to talk about this. Favorite conversation. I guess I'm gonna have some like hot takes in here, but I think that a lot of the conversations that are happening right now surrounding social media and witchcraft are the ones that I wish were happening a couple of years ago, and I'm excited to see them happening now. So let's get started. So there's several topics. The first one is impact on community. The second one is influencer authenticity. The third one is imposter syndrome and fear of missing out. The fourth one is capitalizing off community, and then conclusions. So these came from Ella Harrison's Patreon, by the way. I will link their videos down below. I think I should introduce myself. If you don't know who I am, my name is Chaotic Witch Aunt. I also go by Frankie Castanea or Frankie Ann Castanea. I am a Italian-American folk practitioner, a reconnector, an ancestral venerator, an animist, and a folk witch, along with a bunch of other things with a lot of elements of Italian-American folk practices in my practice in life. I've been practicing witchcraft for I don't know how many years. I don't keep track, honestly. Everyone always asks me, like, tell us how long you've been practicing. I do not know. I started around 2016, 2017, but I didn't start like logging anything until 2017. So 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. 7 years? 8 years? I'll know when it hits a decade. 2026 or 2027 is when I'll be in a decade in witchcraft. I'm a folk practitioner as well, and I've been reconnecting to that for 2-3 years. So the first topic is impact on community, and this is surrounding social media and practices. And so the first question is, what is my personal reasoning or inspiration behind sharing my practice online, or what am I looking to achieve by participating? Do I seek to educate, learn, or connect? Originally, I wanted to share it because I felt like I could find a community, especially on TikTok. And so I'm approaching this from someone who has spent a lot of time on TikTok and then now is more Instagram, YouTube, in person. My reasoning behind it originally was to just kind of find like-minded people. And I didn't really want to be an educator, but I think due to the insane amount of like progress that my account had, I quickly felt like I was being forced into an education position, and I felt as though no matter what I did, people were gonna look at my content to educate them. Really now, I like to share things about my journey because there are not many people who are really open about their reconnection. There's not a lot of sources on how to do that or what it looks like or all the kind of things of it. You just kind of experience it, and I would like to share it because I feel like it can help people, but I also am leaning more towards now learning and connecting with people, and I do kind of have my own online community and people who definitely, you know, still look at me as a teacher, but I think there's a way to be less definitive in the way you educate and more open to helping people get to the conclusions they need to get to. How do I believe social media as a whole has impacted the community? I don't know if I believe that social media fosters community. I think that It does. It fosters connection, but I also think that our idea of community may not necessarily be present in social media the way it should be or could be. How do I believe? I think that it has very quickly put people on pedestals who maybe don't deserve to be there. I don't think I deserve to be on a pedestal in 2020. I don't think I deserve to have people look up to me as a teacher in 2020. But it also fosters a lot of room for not necessarily misinformation, but harmful narratives and like groups supporting that harmful narrative to prosper. And what I mean by that is it's really easy to surround yourself with groups of people who think the same way as you. It's comfortable, we love it, but sometimes it's better to not have that, especially if harmful narratives are being pursued in those groups. Or sometimes that's like really great because you find a community of like people from the same background or of the same identity. But I do think that there continues to remain room for harm to happen in those kind of niches. And that's something that I think about a lot. How do I think social platforms such as TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube have impacted education and sharing information? We don't know how to cross-reference. I realized that very quickly, is sometimes y'all, me included, we see things, and I've done this. So I say this as someone who's done this. We see something, we're like, oh, and we run with it. And we don't slow down and try to find where it came from or check anything. This, I think, is especially present on TikTok. That is also why I really don't like making TikToks as much as I used to, and I really don't consider it my primary platform, is because so many times have you seen someone see something, a video, a piece of information in that video, take it and run with it as 100% fact, or alternatively, see a video, take an assumption from that video, or even like misunderstand what is going on, not ask for any more context, and immediately like take it and run with it. The amount of times I had to like specify certain things in the caption or in the video so people didn't just see what I was saying and take it to like 110% the other direction was insane. And I mean this like not just being like, oh, taking this at face value, like full-blown assumptions going from 0 to 100 all the way there. And that is how I think TikTok has affected it. Instagram, I think there's still a level of that, but there's a lot more room for slowing down conversation, cross-referencing. People can list their sources in the caption. People can have conversation. I've seen like really good conversations happen. I've seen community discussions happen on TikTok, on Instagram, in a way that I don't think the TikTok algorithm promotes. It doesn't promote longer videos. It doesn't promote videos with a lot of really good information and sources. It promotes really quick content. 6 seconds or less, and you cannot pack all of the nuance you need in there. It kills nuance, TikTok does. Instagram gives a little more room for it. It's very easy for it to sometimes slip into that, but I do think there is more room for it, which is why I prefer Instagram. YouTube, one of my favorites. Love long form content, but I also think that there's less ability to have community conversations unless we're all doing like a hashtag. I think that there's someone making a video and you're on the video and they're giving you information, and then you kind of have a section to talk more about it and add on, but it's not like sitting down and having a conversation with someone. On Instagram, I've noticed that, you know, same thing. There's someone who's being posited as a sharer of information, a creator, giving you something, and someone else watching that and consuming it. And that is not a community dynamic. That is like a following someone dynamic. To create a community dynamic, you need to be able to pull everyone in and have conversations come from all corners and like have opinions come from all corners, not just like what's happening now in our culty. That's a community conversation. What isn't is like creator, follower, you know? So I think Instagram is fantastic. I don't know, I think the sharing of information has we sometimes hit a point where I'm like, I need I don't even know. I don't, like, I hope no one, that's why I'm so clear when I post anything. I'm like, this is not, I am not, please don't, I'm not your only source. Please don't treat me as your only source, because that puts someone in the position where it's one person sharing everything, no matter how much experience, no matter how much knowledge, no matter how long they've been doing it, they don't know everything. So the goal, I think, for me is to say, hey, this is what I know. Here are a bunch of other sources and people who know more. Here are other places you can go to learn more. Because that in turn creates kind of a multi-level like group of people to get information from, not just one person. So like I said, one person is never gonna know everything. Is consuming witchcraft content becoming a substitute for practice? I hope not. I don't think it is. I think that you can consume content. I mean, and I'm sure that there are people who consume a lot of witchcraft content and consider themselves practitioners but aren't actively practicing. And I think that's maybe what this question is aiming at, but I also think that sometimes that's just how life works, is we have the time for consuming things related to something we're interested in but not actually doing it. And I don't think that necessarily anyone's walking around saying that they're like a witch practicing, or like a witch because they watch witch videos. I don't know if that's what this is aimed at, but I don't think that that's a problem. But I'm also not sure. I don't know if I understand the question. So let me know if you have a different opinion in the comments. Topic 2, influencer authenticity. Out of what I share on social media, how much of it is staged versus reality? So when I'm sitting down like this with this camera and this on, that is like staged. I put on makeup, I put on a veil for this. Half of my B-roll is probably going to be reality, where I just set up a camera while I'm doing something. The other, actually I'd say 90% of my B-roll or vlogs are like 100% like, this is just what I'm doing. The only time I really feel the pressure to stage things is when I'm doing like a spell walkthrough for someone, and then I'm probably staging it a little because I don't want to show my actual spell. But in the past 2 videos, all of that B-roll, like that was me actually doing things for my shop. That was actually me, you know, doing things, like stuff I had to get done. I just set my camera up. And I don't know, I mean, I think there's always some element of things being staged because I have the cognizance to like put my camera up and find a good angle. But I am really doing those things. I am really sitting there dressing candles. I am really reading a book. There may be a couple times where I'm like, I'm gonna take a B-roll with this book. And then I forget that the camera's there. Those things run for a while. But I would say that I think my goal with my channel has always been to show the reality of my practice and the reality of my day-to-day, which is why a lot of times in those B-roll videos, you're just seeing me like fully in, like I'm not dressed. I am in PJs, or I have the cognizance to get dressed, and then I'm like not wearing any makeup whatsoever. I think that's always been my goal, always, is to be authentic and to show kind of the reality of my practice. The only thing that you probably won't see is my living space right now. It's a bit messy. I don't like showing my mess. Any B-roller stuff with me cleaning, always real. I'm actually cleaning. Do I think there's an element of censorship in online spaces, and how do I decipher what is appropriate to share online versus what to keep privately? Is this based off social media etiquette or a personal preference? Censorship is an interesting conversation. I don't know if I want to answer that because I don't feel like I get censored a lot. So I don't know if I'm the best person to have that conversation. How do I decipher what is appropriate versus what to keep privately? Fully what I'm comfortable with. There's no social media etiquette. It's all personal preference. I don't know what social media etiquette is. Am I supposed to be sharing stuff? Like, does that mean like if it's pretty? It really is based on my personal preference. It's based on my spirits and what they allow me to share. It's based on what I am comfortable with sharing. I will not put something online if my camera turns off in the middle of like it being filmed, or like the footage is randomly lost. A lot of times that's my sign that I'm not supposed to post it. It's a personal thing. I also am very particular with like what kind of spells are posted publicly, what kind of protection is posted publicly, and all of these are things that are very much influenced by my practice and my beliefs surrounding my practice. You'll never see me post like a cure from my practice online. That's just not what I would not do that. I do not post the prayers I use, especially the Italian ones, online. I'd never post exactly how I'm doing something. You may see like bits and pieces, but you're never gonna see a full walkthrough of something that I rely on for my basic protection on a day-to-day. Which is why a lot of times when I do spell walkthroughs, they are staged, because I will not let anyone see the actual work. And this is my thing, is I do not post any of my workings like up until like 3 days after it's done. If it's not done, not getting posted. If I am, you know, if I'm like working on like a recipe for an oil, you probably will not see that. You will not see anything that is like past this level here of like my comfort. And that is genuinely something that has happened and occurred in later years, because I used to share everything. I used to share all of this stuff happening, all the changes in my practice, everything publicly, all of my spells. And now, no, you will not, like, I will not show 90% of the workings that I do. The other 10% are ones where prayers are withheld, you don't hear them, or it's clips. The other 90% are spells that I use to keep my business running, spells that I use to protect my home and my loved ones, spells that I use to protect myself, things that are considered sacred to me or to my tradition, and they will never be put online. They will only be passed orally to someone I trust. And that is just how I do things now, and that's okay. You can still share something and share your opinion and share elements of your practice that you're comfortable with, and opinion, like things that may help other people, without sharing the entirety of your practice. And I think that's something that I saw recently on like threads, is like, you don't have to put your practice out there in order to be someone who can contribute to this to the conversation. I don't need to see what you're doing 100% of the time to know that to enjoy your presence or your opinion. Can you share educational content? Can you share aspects of your practice? Yes. But can you also create educational content based off your experiences and opinions without showing those things of your practice? Yeah. I know a lot of people who do that. Have I ever encountered or heard of grifters in our community? Yeah. I also have some difficulty with that word. Not because I think it's bad, but I do think that witchcraft and spirituality is, you know, having a wave. It's having a big important moment, and there will always be people who see those trends happening and take advantage of people's money. And they're like, that's bad, but I feel like I've heard that word used describing people who aren't grifters, who are just making a living, and who like the other person doesn't like. So I'm very, very hesitant in calling anyone that, because I've heard it be misplaced many times. I've heard someone disagree with someone's opinions or how they run things and call them a grifter, when in reality, we had no idea. I don't really know, even, like, are grifters just people who hop on trends and take all this money? Are grifters just people who don't actually practice but take people's money? These are the questions that I have, and that's why I'm not answering like significant signs of grifters in the community. I will always do my best to warn my audience about people who will take advantage of them in vulnerable situations, or who will try to offer a one-size-fits-all, here's everything you need to know in this one class from this one teacher. I will always warn people against doing that, because like I said in the past, no one will ever know everything. What I won't do is I won't try to point at someone who I really don't know that much about, and I don't know anything about like their tradition and their practice, and just because I disagree with them say, oh, you're a grifter. But I don't think that someone being a bad person makes them a grifter either. I think that you can be a bad person in our community and still contribute, and maybe we just don't like each other. So like I said, I'm really hesitant towards that term because of the ways I've heard it used, the ways I've heard it being thrown around. And I think that a little bit more time with sitting with each other and reflecting on our own biases and our feelings could go a long way. What tools are helpful to decipher misinformation, and how can we as a community prevent widespread information? Cross-referencing, following a lot of people in a similar vein, following a lot of people in your community to kind of see if they're all saying similar things. You can also directly like take something that someone's saying and research it. I think that to prevent misinformation, there's a moment of reading something, taking it in, and then sitting with it for 2 to 4 business days and doing your own cross-referencing and also referencing to other people in your community. So like if someone's sitting here saying the sign of a cross is a pagan symbol, and you're like, sign of a cross is a pagan symbol, you just take it and run with it, versus stopping and looking it up and then looking at other people, other teachers talking about it, other books talking about it, and kind of sitting there and dealing with it, and then then kind of deciding how to move forward. There's like a slowdown period that social media doesn't always encourage, that I feel like is really important in stopping misinformation, because I've seen so many people like debunk misinformation on their pages, and if someone had slowed down and kind of maybe looked up a term, they would have been able to spot it and see like that information that was given. I don't know how to answer the next question. How does a large following impact the perception of the creator, and does this immediately make them an expert, or are there other assumptions as to why they may have a large following? I hope everyone knows that a large following, I'm sitting here like, no, I am not an expert. Please don't look at me that way. Please. I think that the large following, what that says about someone is not that they are an expert, not that they know everything, even if some people interpret it that way. I think what it says is that you are marketable to a large audience. You are marketable to a large audience, and or you have the capability of being trustworthy to a lot of people. Maybe you give good information. I've seen a lot of creators with large followings, and I sit there and I'm like, okay, I don't think you're an expert in what you're talking about, but I do know that what you're posting a lot of people like. Some of my best teachers and peers have a lot lower followers than me, and they are still, to me, teachers of those things who know a lot. I think if anything, a large following to me looks like, oh, you know how to market yourself. You know an audience that you want to get in. Not even you know how to market yourself, it's just you are marketable. What you post is pretty and marketable, and it can reach a wider audience than what you have now. That doesn't mean that you know everything. It just means that you know how to work an algorithm. As a large creator who does not know everything and is not an expert, I just know how to work an algorithm. And most of the time, I don't even know how to do that. So there's also something to say about larger creators very often being like white, of smaller stature and smaller size. You will not see a lot of the largest people and the largest followings in the witchcraft community be outside of that. There are some who I love, like Mint Fairy, but I learned very quickly with TikTok that if you were white and skinny, you were more likely to be pushed by the algorithm. And I think a lot of people have forgotten that, is that social media is fucking racist. That's another reason. How does one maintain the balance of authenticity and content creation? Lots of fucking breaks. Lots of time off, lots of time not filming, lots of time with friends that I don't put the pressure on myself to film. I am my most creative and my most authentic when I'm not burned out. Because when I'm burned out, I'm like, I really don't want to spend all this time doing these things that I can, or filming this stuff. I really just want to be left alone. So lots of breaks. That's for me what I do. And I think that for me, I don't, even though I don't share a lot of my practice, I don't have issue with sharing like taking videos of things I'm doing, even if it's very boring. So I feel like for me, that's when I'm my most authentic, is when I just sit there and I talk and I say my shit. I say my opinion. I don't try to work with a structure, which is so wild because for so long I was very structured, and now I'm like, I'm gonna speak my mind, and that's gonna be the authentic me. Topic 3, blowing through these questions. I'm so sorry. Maybe I should say more. I feel like some of these things I'm like, that's my opinion. Imposter syndrome and fear of missing out. When I follow other creators in the community space, does it make me feel genuinely inspired and empowered, or does it create feelings of FOMO and being less than? Both. There are plenty of times where I am genuinely inspired by other creators, and there are plenty of times where I look at someone's content and I compare myself to them. Every time. And I don't think that's just a me thing, that's everyone, because the human experience, I feel like, or the creator experience, or there's an experience and it's common to look at something and compare yourself to it, because that's what our society has told us to do. I don't think that's a byproduct. That is a byproduct of social media as a whole, but also as our world currently as a whole is comparing ourselves to others. If you think of like 2010s, that's all it was. Does it make me feel genuinely inspired? Yes. And this even happens with like creators who are my friends. Sometimes I see their content and their experiences and I'm like, fuck, I wish I could do that. I wish that was, something I could do, but I can't. And I'm sure there are people who look at me and my content and think that too. But I have noticed that for me, it's a lot more about reframing my mindset than it is looking and just engaging with content mindlessly. For me, it's about stopping and being like, well, why do I feel jealous of this? Why do I feel less than of this? When this person's on a completely different niche than me, completely different situation, or this person is a completely different person than I am. How are we gonna have the same experiences when we have completely different needs? And I think that is something that we communally can work on, is reframing. Just kind of working with that. If I experience fear of missing out, has it ever left me feeling vulnerable to be taken advantage of financially or otherwise? An example would be the need to purchase the latest popular product or book to fit in. No, I have never succumbed to peer pressure, and I don't intend to now. That did sound like a flex, but genuinely, I haven't been taken advantage of financially, but I did have a fear of missing out if I stopped posting on TikTok. For 2 years, that was what kept me posting, is I had a fear that I was going to miss out and lose relatability or lose my following or even just lose something, because I felt like TikTok was my whole life. And you know what happened? It tanked my mental health. I have never been happier than I was off of TikTok. That was, I think, what left me vulnerable, is that I was in honestly toxic relationship with that app. I had a fear of missing out, but also just a pressure. I have succumbed to peer pressure with TikTok, but it's not even other people's pressure, it's my own pressure. Less peer pressure, more self-pressure. I felt like that was I had to keep posting, I had to do things, I had to do 3 a day, or else I was not, the algorithm wouldn't like me, people would stop watching me. Because my Instagram wasn't as big as it was now, neither was my YouTube, so I felt like TikTok was my only way to express myself. But it also just left me churning out content so much that at a point I was like, I'm done. That was a long time coming. And when my mom told me 2 years ago that at one point I would grow out of it because TikTok would no longer be the platform that was best for me and it would not be somewhere I fit anymore, I said, that'll never happen. It did. It did. that was how I wasn't even taken advantage of financially. I just was in a position where, you know, I didn't do well mentally or emotionally, because I felt like there was a pressure on me as someone who was like the largest creator on Witch Talk. I felt like there was a pressure on me to continue posting and continue to weigh in on things and continue to be around and pay attention and show support to everyone and make sure I was a good role model for everyone there and make sure that I did everything right all of the time. And I was really unhappy, because I think for a while I felt like I was maybe making a positive change. And then I started noticing around 2021 that the same cycles, the same things, the same people were coming back again and again and again with the same issues, the same topics of conversation, the same problems were happening in cycles again. And like every 6 months, a drama would happen or someone would do something really shitty. A bunch of people would call them out. 5 months would pass, same person does the exact same thing. And because TikTok pushed all of that information down and it moved so quick, there would be a whole new group of people who had never seen this information about this person before. It'd be like, oh my God, I didn't realize they were terrible. Calling out, realizations. 5 months, same thing would happen again. It'd be different creators maybe, but same shit. Different people, same shit, different times. And I got to a point where I realized that no one was going to change, and the app wasn't going to change the way it promoted things, and I wasn't going to change anything. So I left. And what happened was the people who I made a positive effect on came with me. There are so many people here who like find me, they're like, oh my God. And I'm like, hey, it's good to see you. You know what happened? I am so much better mentally. I'm not racked by fucking anxiety and feeling the crushing weight of my own soul all of the time. It was fun for a while, and then it felt like a lot. There was 1 million people watching me. 1 million people watching. And I was so afraid that if I stopped posting, I'd lose relevancy. But I don't really want to have 1 million people looking at me. I just want like a really small amount. I don't know if I've ever like talked about the way TikTok operates and Witch Talk operated, and to my knowledge now, Witch Talk doesn't really exist anymore because all of the creators left. Because it got to a point where it was same shit happening over and over again, and everyone like realized and stopped. It was just it was an environment where I don't think anyone could flourish long term or sustain long term. And I do still sometimes post, and I do see other people posting, but I don't think it has the same like popularity or the same amount of people posting as it used to. When practicing the craft, do I find myself comparing what I do to what I've been seeing people do online? This, for me, is through a context of reconnection. I think it's very hard for me not to compare myself to other Italian American folk practitioners and Italian American culture that I didn't grow up with when I practice. I think it's very hard for me not ever to think about that loss. And the way in which my practice is not ever going to be exactly what my ancestors did or wasn't passed down to me, and I'm kind of just figuring this out for myself. I really think that is something that I will always think about. There's always going to be grief around that. There's always going to be imposter syndrome or feeling like I'm not good enough. And it's just the question of how do I deal with it, not how do I get rid of it. Grief like that, of like ancestral grief, does not go away. You just sit with it. And you feel it sometimes, and then other times you don't. But what I've realized a lot of the time is that the things that are passed to me, the things that I learn, even though they're not exactly what my ancestors did, it's still my practice. It still works. The research I do, the way I have reconnected, there's nothing wrong with it, because I am learning, and that's all right. In what ways do I combat imposter syndrome? You know, for someone who was talking a lot about how they You just gotta deal with it. I don't have a lot of ways to cope with imposter syndrome. I just kind of have it. And I think I talk to a lot of people about it. I talk to my teachers about it, my peers about it. I talk through those feelings because I'm an external processor. So I sit down with people and I talk through it, and I talk through it over and over and over and over again. And then I get there. Very external processor. Say things 300 times, then I feel okay. I'm trying to journal more and spend more time reflecting with self. But I still kind of, have these conversations with people, and in those conversations I'm able to recognize how to move through it, or where my grief comes from, or where it comes from, or why I feel that way. But mostly talking to people and just kind of being depressed for a little and then being like, what the fuck is this? Ah! I don't know. What would my practice look like without the social media influence of other creators? I don't think I'd be an Italian-American folk practitioner if I hadn't found my teachers through social media and learned from them. I think that is the upside to this, right? Is like, I'm found my community on social media, my like Italian-American folk practitioner community. I found my teachers on social media. I found all of these people that made me who I am today on social media, who have guided me, who have been there, who have sat with me, who have talked with me. I have met them through social media. My practice would not be an Italian-American practice without them. Maybe I would have made it, eventually to where I am now, but not as quickly, not as confidently. I wouldn't be who I was without that community. And I think that says a lot, not only about the way in which social media influenced my practice, but also just the way in which, on the opposite side of all these negative things, there's a lot of positive stuff too. Because maybe, just maybe, you're on the other side of the country from someone who's teaching classes about the folk magic you want to reconnect to, and your old babysitter sends you the link, and you by chance have the money to sign up for that first class, and then your life changes. That's something that we have never had before. It has all of these flaws and faults, but it also has the amazing capability to connect us to people who we never would have met otherwise. And that, a little bit magic, like social media, but also, wow. I don't think we can conceptualize this. And that's why I'm so careful. I openly criticize social media. There are so many things I hate about social media and hate about TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. But at the same time, that connection that I would not have had maybe 100 years ago. If I was in my ancestors' village, I would have had that connection and community in person. But now, that's something I lacked for a lot of my life. And I found it through connecting with other content creators and connecting with people on social media and following people and getting sent links and taking those classes. And that is not something I want to ignore. That really good side of it is that we have an entire world right in our hands. The ability to reconnect is right there. And also like a couple of years away because you gotta work. Yeah, you gotta do that too. But like, you don't understand what I'm saying? Like, I can't just sit here and trash all of social media, because when I go on Instagram, I'm checking in with my community in a way. And like, I meet with them outside of that too, but like a lot of it is there. I met them there. I learned from them and found them through there. And I don't want to take advantage of that. But there is like community that happens outside of that too, that's not just on Instagram, but also like I discovered them through Instagram. So anyways, topic 4, capitalizing off community. Do I consider online communities as equally valid to in-person communities? No, because it still has that discrepancy of someone posting, someone commenting, someone being followed, someone there. I think that in-person community, or even community virtually in like a communal third space that's not a follow, like, etc., is really important. Because it opens up the dialogue for two people to talk, not just one to talk through a post and one to leave a comment. Even though we can have those conversations there, a social media group chat is not going to be the same as sitting in a video call or sitting in a circle with a group of people and talking. And there's also a level of like in-person vetting that I've talked about in the past that I think is really important. That like when you are part of a community, you are being vetted by that community. You are being like vetted. And that's a thing that I think we need to do more of, is we need to be more conscious and cognizant of the people we're following. Do they have teachers? Are they in an in-person community? If not, do they have a really strong online community? Do they teach, you know, who were their teachers? Who are they teaching now? Because the amount of times I've seen people just claim that they're in this tradition, in that tradition, that, and then you go to the in-person community of that tradition, they're like, we've never heard of them. That's what social media does. It makes room for that in the same way it makes room for all of us to find each other. How have online occult witchcraft communities impacted me as a person and as a practitioner? As a person, it's made me a lot less trusting of people. It's made me a lot more hesitant to connect with people or to make new friends. And as a person, it has made my vetting and my boundaries stronger. As a person, it's made me tougher, not in all the good ways, in some bad ways, and as a practitioner, it has made me who I am. What are some of the dangers of the current phenomenon of capitalizing off the witchcraft community? Have I been personally affected by this, or have I witnessed someone else be affected? I feel like I've talked about this a little already. I have not personally been affected. I have a couple people I know of that have been affected. Lays a dynamic for people to be very predatory and take advantage of people in really vulnerable situations. In situations where maybe they cannot be helped by magic. In situations where, you know, we see cults occur. In situations where they spend a ton of money trying to fix something that they didn't need to fix with spirituality or that class in the first place. That is something that I really think about, is the capability for that to occur has always occurred in spiritual communities, and social media makes it a lot harder for people to double check someone's legitimacy, which is why we should cross-reference. Should there be paywalled communities and online courses? So I say yes to keep those communities safe, because with the kind of surge of online communities, you have a surge of spaces in which like raids happen. People enter the space and need to be removed. People target those spaces, and people can harm the members of that community. And online courses, here's the thing, is like, I've had this conversation a lot. In the days where we were all like in a community together and we all knew each other, that we were, you know, given an energetic exchange. We were paid for our labor, not through actual money, but through that community protecting us, feeding us, housing us. That doesn't happen anymore because we don't have access to that, at least in the context of like my tradition. That energetic exchange is financial a lot of the times. And there's some like differing opinions on this. I'm not the only opinion. It's partially financial, but also I think in my mind, a lot of people are doing this for their jobs, and we're in a period right now where inflation is very bad. You can work to create a community that is safe, but also protected, but also considers the fact that I'm creating content because it's my job. Because I love to do it, yes, that's why I do YouTube, but also because it's, you know, a job. And I think you can still work to create things on a donation basis, create things accessible. You can work with people one-on-one to ensure that they have access to it. But at the same time, if someone is putting out tons and tons of public information and public spaces and public availability, and they're not getting compensated, there has to be another method for compensation. I don't want to paywall a lot of my information. The information I paywall is for people who want to give me more, who feel like they want more. I'm not really like sitting there being like, look at all these things I offer. It's like for people who want to give me or have the ability to give me more, not for here's a bunch of information that I would never post online. You know, I don't change, like that doesn't happen behind a paywall for me. And I know a lot of people that like, I think I say this all the time, in a perfect world, we would not have to have that happen. But, and like, I would love to be able to have a non-paywall, like open Discord or community. And there are a lot of spaces where those communities happen in real life, off the internet. But in terms of safety, I am very aware that I would not be able to control and be as cognizant of that community if it was not paywalled, because it would literally like be like chaos. There would be like hundreds and hundreds of people in it, and suddenly it would get out of control and I would not be able to be there. And that's just my understanding of my limits. And that doesn't mean that I'm not going to attempt to create a community outside of that paywall or be in communities outside of that paywall, but there's just sometimes that's just something that happens. I don't know if this makes sense. Paywall communities, you shouldn't have to pay to be part of a community, but also sometimes communities are behind paywalls and in front of them. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know if that makes any sense. I don't pay to be a part of the online community of Italian American practitioners, but I do have a community in my Patreon where that exists behind a paywall. But I don't think that in order to be part of a community, you should pay for it. And once again, online courses, I'm always going to back up supporting people financially because that is an energetic exchange. I think that we need to leave behind the idea that we are in a period where knowledge can be given freely for people who are doing this as a job. If you are putting time and effort into it, if you are putting time and effort into creating things, you should be compensated for your labor. And unfortunately, we live in a capitalist society where that's normal. If you're not in that situation, I am so happy for you. I am. And my price of living has gone up. So I do not have the capability to do free online courses. What I do have the capability to do is make them very cheap and hope that I make it. And I think like Mary Beth Bonfiglio has talked so much more about this and created a lot of really good community spaces that are donation based and community, like, and those are really, really important. I just follow Mary Beth Bon. I love Mary Beth. I hope you watch this. You probably won't, but if you do, hi. How does one ensure the authenticity of courses, workshops, memberships, etc. as a financial investment? So this is kind of multi-tiered approach, right? If you're doing a financial investment, I look at other people who have taken the courses and can vouch for them and say, this is what I got from it and this is how it was, right? I look for people who also have done multiple workshops before and have people who take those workshops on a pretty regular basis and vouch for that information. I also look at people that have teachers that vouch for them. I look at people who teach through a school because then they're communally vetted in person. And the equivalent of that communal vetting online is to check and see who their teachers are, check and see who has been taught by them, check and see who their peers are, who collaborates with them, and then in turn kind of what information they have and who they were taught by, how long they've been operating, what exactly you're going to get from this, other people who have taken it who can vouch for it, which is why I'm always so open about who has taught me and like that, because that is telling people that I can vouch for the people I've taken classes from. I can vouch for these teachers. They help me a lot. I can also be vouched for in what I have learned. And then eventually maybe offer my own classes of like similar areas because I have taken those classes with those people and I am an active member of that community. Memberships, courses, workshops, I think are always going to be complicated. But really like that communal vetting of being someone who teaches in person at like a store, at a school, someone who has a lot of people vouching for it and what they got exactly from it, transparency about where they were taught and what traditions they're a part of, transparency in terms of exactly what you're getting. Those are things that I feel like make authenticity, honesty, transparency, being upfront with what exactly you're getting. Then conclusions. My camera may die. I'm probably gonna stop this and revisit communications later when my camera battery is, you know, fulfilled. So I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, conclusions several days later, because I ran out of daylight and I don't have fancy lights. So, what are some topics of conversation I'd like to see more in our community? I'd love to see more conversations about red flags in mentors, teachers, and sources. I feel like I fell into a lot of pitfalls, even like more recently, with who I was trusting and who I was giving, you know, my time and who I was considering a teacher, when in reality, if I had kind of done a little bit more critical thinking or nuance or kind of looking at things past, you know, them being older than me or past them, you know, posing themselves as an authority, I would have seen a little bit more of those red flags. And I mean, honestly, I'd love to make a video about it, because I feel like the teachers I have now, the peers I have now, the mentors I have now, like, it's like a two-way street a lot of the time, because I do take their classes and I learn a lot from them, but I also in many cases feel like they're learning something from me. Maybe not as big, but like there's an opening of conversation and a kind of it's not like I'm right, you're wrong. Or like I'm the authority and I'm the teacher, so I have, you know, I know more than you. It's like one of my like peers and teachers, we had a conversation about a book she recommended, and it was like a two-way thing. And the conversation was really good and it brought up a lot of things, but like having that door open for that conversation is really important. And that goes for me, that goes for everyone. It's not just like I'm the person who knows everything, and like if you don't know as much as me, you can't say anything. I know this is weird too, but that's kind of what I want to see more of, because there's so many people who offer classes, there's so many people who offer schools, and I haven't taken many of them, not because I don't want to, but maybe because it doesn't interest me, right? And this isn't about anyone in specific, but it is like a conversation that I think needs to happen about how do we really confirm that class is going to be good for us and that financial investment is going to be good for us. Because we talked about like the authenticity of courses, workshops, memberships, right? And I think authenticity is an interesting word, because in some cases, yes, authenticity. If you are taking a class on a specific tradition that is like serving to teach you about this tradition, you need to verify authenticity. But a lot of times I feel like when we look at workshops or a lot of the classes I take, it's more about building community spaces. And those community spaces need to be vetted. So once again, we're coming back into vetting. I love vetting. I love making sure everyone knows who taught who and who's in their community with them. What are my community needs? I think a lot of my community needs are being met right now, just in terms of like in-person community, in terms of my online kind of community, and then in terms of my Italian American community and my like friends and family, which is my community. My community needs, as always, I think, are making space for messing up, making space for making mistakes, and then growing and learning from it. It's about making space for questions. It's about making space for things that look slightly different within the same tradition. And I try to hold those values, what I would like to see in my community, on my channel and in my spaces, is, you know, not really tolerating a level of, I mean, I will never ever tolerate like any sort of bigotry of any kind, any sort of discrimination of any kind. And I'm very lucky that my teachers and the people I surround myself with have been doing this work a lot longer than me in those areas, because it sets a precedent for me to follow in their footsteps. Where would I like to be held and supported? I mean, very honestly, I don't think the online community can do anything for me that my in-person community isn't doing. Right now, It's unfortunate, but like financial support is really what I need the most. I'm in a interesting spot in my life, in an interesting transition, and someone actually sent me something and I kind of cried, which if you're watching this, I hope you know that made my day. I cried a lot. And I feel like it's difficult because that is the space where like I really struggle asking for help. I really struggle with receiving things, but it is kind of the place right now where like I just left my part-time job and I'm doing readings again. And I'm not saying like just send me money. I'm saying like if you have the ability to support my work past watching a video, even if it's like the lowest tier on my Patreon, even if it's the smallest thing in my shop, I would appreciate it so much. Because that's really, I think, where I need that right now. Unfortunately. That's where I have been struggling because like my Patreon shrunk, my YouTube just isn't paying creators as much anymore. So the money that I make from YouTube, if it doesn't come from a sponsorship, it is like just break even with how much money I'm putting into creating videos. And the reason I'm doing it now is genuinely just because I enjoy it. Like there's no money coming out of YouTube anymore, unless I get a sponsorship, which I did recently. Thank you. And that's like for the online community, like that is just where I need it right now. I'm sure that'll change and morph in the future. The other area, is that's the rest of the community that I have is kind of supporting me in like all the emotional ways I need. Where do I feel like I'm not truly being seen by my community? So I think there's two kind of answers to this for me. One is I think that it's gotten better as of recently, but I feel like there is a misunderstanding with my practice sometimes, not all the time and not by everyone, but and the people who are also Italian American or Italian or Sicilian or and they get it. It may be because I identify as pagan for so long and now I'm switching and no longer identify as that. But I feel like, when I came out, and I think about this still, when I came out and made a video where I'm like, I'm not pagan and I'm not Catholic, I'm something in between, I'm dual faith. People were very upset by that. And not everyone, there were so many supportive comments, but all the supportive comments came from folk practitioners. And so I just want people to understand that perhaps the reason I don't want to refer to myself as a pagan anymore is because I feel like that community doesn't support me as much. That isn't going for everyone. There are lots and lots of pagans and neo-pagans that I hang out with that are supporting my channel, supporting my work, and don't think that you're going unnoticed. But I am saying for the greater pagan community, there is a level to it that it's now that I am really a folk practitioner, I do Italian American folk magic, I don't mesh with that community in a way. There are aspects of my practice that I feel very rightfully so will make people uncomfortable sometimes, and that's okay. I understand there's saints in the back of my videos now, and that's valid and that's very understandable. I'm not going to force you to engage with my content if the elements of it that are Catholic make you uncomfortable, but it also is why I don't use that term to refer to myself anymore, because I'm not really in the pagan community. I am I'm a witch, right? I'm in the witch community. I'm not in the pagan community. I may be friends with pagans, I may be hanging out with pagans, I may have pagans who support me, but I'm not writing or contributing on paganism anymore. Unless I don't know if that's true. I guess it's less so than before. And so I think that the fact that there was such pushback, not just from Catholics, trad Catholics being you're a fucking heathen, that happened, yeah. But also pagans being angry that I didn't want to identify as pagan. I don't know what to tell you guys. I don't feel like either community, Catholic or pagan, really fits me. I'm just in my own space with my community that exists. Italian Americans, Italian American folk practitioners, Italian practitioners, and folk practitioners. And that's kind of where I am. And that is the terminology I use when referring to myself now. That's one aspect of it, is I do think that even if you look at my, like, and I said this before too, on a technicality, my practice could be pagan. But I decided not to go on a technicality because I found a term that suited me better. And the fact that so many people in the pagan community were so upset that I just didn't want to, like, literally saw subtweets about it. And I was like, I just have a different term that I use now, and I'm kind of in a different space and a different time of my life with different teachers in a different community. And I was so shocked by it, but it also just solidified me being like, yeah, I don't want to refer to myself as just a pagan anymore. Because I didn't like the response I got from, like, just changing what I refer to myself as. That was the vibe. I think that's, like, I think we really need to do some introspection into why someone, not even exit, like, I am still mutuals and friends with all of these people who are considered pagan. Like, I'm still technically in the pagan community because but I'm not a pagan. I'm a folk practitioner. I'm in the witch community though. Witches. Well, yeah, maybe some introspection there. And I do feel like that's something that, unless you're a folk practitioner, unless you're a folk Catholic practitioner, unless you're an Italian American practitioner, you won't get it. And that's okay. And if you do get it and you're not one of the things, great, like, thanks. The other aspect, sometimes I feel like people are, I always feel like I am, you know, the person holding myself to a pedestal and holding myself to an incredibly high standard. But I also feels like that came from the internet. I talked about TikTok earlier and how there was this immense pressure to, like, be informed on everything that was going on. Like, I had people get mad at me sometimes when I was on TikTok because I was the biggest creator and I didn't know about their drama or their thing that was happening. They're like, you should be informed and you should know about this. So I think that that has stayed with me, and not in a good way, in a way that I'm, like, really, really hard on myself and really, really self-critical. To a point that it, like, it's like, you know, it tanks my mental health. I feel guilty when I'm not working. I feel guilty when I'm not creating. I feel guilty when things aren't exactly on time. And I think that that's my own shit, but I feel like a lot of people, I think there are a lot of people who know me very well and get me and understand that aspect of me, but I also feel like there are a lot of people who don't get that. And that's okay, but it is, like, something that I'm constantly dealing with. I am always worried that I will do something wrong and people will hate me, and I am always worried that something I create is being, like, subtweeted in another creator's post. And, you know, that's a fun thing that I think maybe every creator deals with to an extent. And that's not to minimize other creators who deal with that. It's just very severe for me. And I think sometimes I wish people held a little bit more kindness when engaging with my content. Like, I feel like sometimes there's just this level of, like, people thinking that you can comment whatever the fuck you want and no one's gonna care. And I think this happens to other creators as well, and just in general. Like, if you are commenting to a human being, you are saying things to someone who is real. When you comment something nasty or something mean or something with good intentions, but you know comes across kind of mean and, like, belittling, that will probably affect the person sitting there, or at least it affects me. And I think that has definitely pushed me away both of those things have pushed me away from engaging with comments, engaging with a lot of things, because I am just, I don't have the energy. I spent so long being told that if I didn't know everything and wasn't aware of everything going on in the community, that I was not doing my job. And now I am very content to stay in my corner and live my life and be happy. How can we help each other in removing the external peer pressure and grow in the community? I feel like recognizing that not everyone's practice looks like the one you have. I think we're honestly, I mean, I understand external peer pressure, but I also think that there's a level to it that we have to hold ourselves accountable and I think call each other in and communicate with each other when it's clear that our kind of biases or our level of things is like affecting kind of how we see things. And that leads into the next question, which is how can we as a community come together with more constructive criticism without it seeming shady or passive aggressive? I genuinely feel like just having an email, like messaging someone, emailing someone, anything along those lines, that kind of personal conversation will never feel shady or passive aggressive to me. I just like prefer that, and I feel like I don't know how we do these things as a community though. I think that's where I'm like falling short, is because I can speak for myself in these situations, but I also feel like maybe subtweeting could die and I'd be okay with it. And I don't mean like making a Twitter thread about something that's a problem or an ongoing problem or a current, like something you've seen again and again. I just mean like a tweet that's very clearly directed at someone else. And I say this as a subtweeter. I have done that, okay? I personally can hold myself accountable. All right, we can hold each other accountable and not subtweet. We gotta end that, all right? I am over it. I am not subtweeting in 2024. I'm just having a conversation with someone or letting it go. How can we as a community do better when we do receive criticism or feedback? I do feel like I am always going to try my best to respond to criticism or feedback, but I do think I like I said, I'm self-critical of myself, you know? Whenever someone gives me criticism or feedback, I kind of just take it in stride and I'm like, okay, let's go. But I think that when we do receive criticism or feedback, receiving it, sitting with it for like 24 hours and then responding to it and moving forward is the best way to do it. Do not respond right away. We all get defensive, all right? We all sometimes are like, what is this person talking about? Or at least sometimes I do. And I'm like, sleep on it and then move forward. What are some community members that I look up to that are reliable sources and aspirations? There are a lot of them, one of which is the Root Circle, Lisa Fazio, Mary Beth Bonfiglio, Ella Harrison, the Polish Folk Witch, Urban Wizard, Bente, the Norse Witch, the Witch of Wanderlust, who posts more vlog stuff now, but I do still love her content. There's a lot more that are not coming to mind too, so please do not judge me, or please don't take it personally if I didn't say that. Add any further thoughts, comments, or prompt questions of your own. Express further points or offer solutions. I don't know what that, I mean, okay, here's some questions. What can I, as someone who creates content for the community, do to make my content better? I don't know. I don't have any thoughts. I have no thoughts in my brain, okay? I need a coffee, all right? And here's the thing, is like, I think in the past couple of years, I've definitely become a little more disconnected with like the witch and pagan online community, and I'm kind of more in my corner with like Italian American folk magic and folk practices, and that's okay. I hope that people see this and it helps them kind of recognize that even though I'm a bigger account and I make content, is that like I'm not infallible, I'm not an expert, I, you know, still feel like and still struggle with, I think, a lot of the things that I struggled with when I started, and just kind of learn more about me and my relationship in the past with social media, and why kind of I interact with it now the way I do. That's all I have for right now, but I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you contribute to the occulty hashtag. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns. If you want, you can turn notifications on, subscribe, or follow, but absolutely no pressure. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Siate benedetti.